Obviously, the buzzword in Silicon Valley is network effects. It's actually quite hard to find a way to build network effects. Over time, as you're running the company, you start finding opportunities to not only differentiate, but also differentiate in a lasting way.
Welcome to Frameworks for Growth. I'm Christina Cacioppo, CEO and co-founder of Vanta, and I'm here today with Amjad Masad, CEO and co-founder of Replit. So prior to Replit, you built big parts of JavaScript infrastructure at Facebook. We were batchmates, YC and Winner 18, and have known each other long before then. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Amjad, you have been thinking about software development and how to make it easier for almost 2 decades now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What trends are you really excited about now that most of us don't know about yet?
Don't know about yet. No, I think, I don't know if people don't know about it yet, but I don't think people understand how fast it's coming, like how fast software agents are going to get better and better. Right now, we have this like version 2 of agent in beta. We're looking at the metrics. It's something like 5 times better. And by the way, version 1 was released in September. So like if...
Oh, it's like 6 months.
Every 6 months you could have it. So I think just this year, large parts of software engineering is going to be automated. The use cases that we're focused on will especially have tremendous gains, because when you're trying to add a software development agent to like a big company repository, it is hard for it to make an impact. But with Replit, people are making applications from scratch. So I think agents in general are going to start to work this year. We have reasoning models. It's going to be a really exciting year.
Neat. Are you all using agents to build Replit?
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely, we're using Replit agents internally. One of my favorite sort of use cases here is that one of our HR team members, her name is Kelsey, she was looking to replace an org chart software we're using. They all kind of sucked in their own ways.
Yes.
So she decided to build her own. And like 3 days later, she had her own. She had all the features she liked. And so not only we are kind of building our software and software engineering team, but like agents and Replit agent is making everyone more productive.
And what is Replit for folks watching?
Good question. So maybe like a year ago, my answer would be different, but right now it's like totally transformed. Basically, it's a way to build software entirely using natural language. Huh. So you can just talk to your phone or computer, and it will write the code for you. It will set up all the packages and libraries. It will provision cloud databases and storage and all of that. And then you can iterate with it. You can like change the design. You can add features. You would talk to it as if you're talking to a human engineer. And then when you're ready, you can deploy it. And all of that happens on this one app. We spent the last 7-8 years building all these components. And we're the only product on the market that has all these components.
You mentioned building for the last 7-8 years, but if I have this right, you've been working on Replit for longer. Mm-hmm. How long have you been working on Replit or something Replit shaped?
I think like the first Replit shaped idea was probably 2008, 2009. I was obsessed with programming. I was wanted to try all these different programming languages. I wanted to code my phone. I had this like Nokia Symbian phone that was like really big phones. Yeah, exactly. I was obsessed with it. I was like, I really want to code on it. Now we have a coding mobile app. The thing that was really annoying about doing homework or learning a new programming language is all the setup you have to do, all the IT chores you have to do. You have to download an IDE, which sometimes like gigabytes big, and you have to figure out the packages and sort of, God forbid, you want to share the program. It almost never works on someone else's machine. Yeah. So at the time, like everything was going to the cloud, right? I remember using Gmail at the time and Google Docs, and Chrome had just come out, and Chrome was really, really powerful. So I was like, why can't we, code in the browser? And, I thought, that'll probably be a weekend project. Little did I know, here 20 years later, I'm working on it. So, but I did get something out in a weekend, and it was like a small sort of sandbox, a text box. You could type a little JavaScript and run it, and it was already pretty cool then.
You probably are one of the people most advanced in the world about JavaScript. How did you start learning JavaScript? And not just like alert box JavaScript, but like Chrome, what you can do in like new Chrome or 2008 Chrome.
After I finished college back in Jordan, I went to work for Yahoo. Yahoo had just acquired a company, an email company called Maktub, and it was like the first big acquisition in Jordan, maybe even in the Arab region. So I went to work there, and Yahoo is very well known sort of web JavaScript shop. So I got really attracted to the language because it had this like sort of scripting angle. It was like also like functional. I was like reading a lot of polygrams, essays about programming languages and Lisp and all of that. Yeah. So it was a very interesting language, but I also felt like I can have a lot of impact with it. I also felt like it's like a bet on the future. And I think this is something I really, try to do. And I think I have an eye for is like, where the future of technology is headed. And I felt like JavaScript is on this trajectory where, you had Chrome optimizing it using V8, and you had, these web applications like Gmail and Docs and all of that. And so started really investing in it. And a lot of it is practice. Like the reason I built Replit is to practice programming. Like I think you just like put in the hours, and if it is fun for you, you're just going to be obsessed and got to keep doing it.
I have so many questions. Like, what was it about the web where you felt like this will be the future? Because like now it sounds so obvious, but Gmail was kind of weird. People wouldn't totally use it. Google Docs had like very low adoption. Wasn't foregone conclusions. I started programming in Basic and then Visual Basic. And like I built like my first sort of business when I was a teenager, selling VB6 applications. And who'd you sell those to?
Yeah, so I was obsessed with playing Counter-Strike. And so I would go to these internet LAN cafes and we'll play Counter-Strike and LAN with my friends. And I was just like surprised by how much manual work was going into managing these stores. They'd have a lot of employees, and when you go in, you'd pay for an hour. They'll like write your name down, and they have to watch the clock and go tap you on your shoulder. So what I did is I wrote this client server management software, and it had security features so that people can only boot up the games or the internet browser, and was able to sell it to a bunch of stores in Jordan. Throughout all of that, I just like learned how painful it is to make and distribute software. Right. And it's kind of also the story behind Replit. It's like, I actually spent 2 years when I was like 12, 13, started working on it. Like I only got it to market when I was 2015. And
on Replit, you mean?
No. The Visual Basic, when I was 15, the Visual Basic kind of application. And throughout that, I just learned how just painful it is to distribute software. So when I saw the web, I saw kind of web applications working, I was like, oh, this is how you distribute applications. Like you don't have to go buy CDs. You don't have to like move software in this way. You just like go to a website and that's your application. You can progressively load it and do all these things. And also you see all the attention going into it, all these companies kind of optimizing for it, and felt like it was the future.
And then what is it about AI now where that's some of that, because it seems like some of that same like, oh, this is the future is going off for you?
Yeah, so actually it goes back to my time at Code Academy. So Code Academy is like you can go to it and type in a bit of programming. It'll like tell you whether you're doing good or not. You go to the next exercise. And so it's like learn by doing programming. And I was trying to give users feedback about their code. And I was doing all this sort of manual regex to just check for completeness. And I just felt like I was building all these tools for code. And I just felt like, well, a lot of this work is really manual. And deep learning was getting good at natural language processing. And I felt, well, like, can't you apply, neural networks on code? And I looked at it at a time, and there was like some initial progress there, but it wasn't there yet. Then at Facebook, I was also, working on compilers and things like that. And I had that urge to kind of go try to figure it out. But played around with certain technologies. It wasn't there yet. We started Replit, the company, 2018-19 GPT-2 comes out. And I felt like, okay, now is the time. Like, I think you can apply natural language processing on code. We have a lot of code data at Replit. We can perhaps fine tune GPT-2 or train a model, but it was a little too early because the tools were not there. Like, it was really painful to do anything with neural networks and especially transformer models. So it wasn't really until GPT-3 that it was obvious that these models are going to be great at code. Now, the next thing you had to sort of imagine, because you can really do it very well, is agents. Mm-hmm. One of the first things I did with GPT-3 was have it produce Python code and then having a Python interpreter run the code. And I think I was one of the first people to do that. And then LangChain came out and they based the code on my experiments. And basically the idea was like, okay, if these language models can call tools and external services, you can see the beginning of what we call an agent today. Yeah. Of course, tool calling is not exactly the only thing you need. It's not sufficient. But if the model can do unbounded set of actions, then I think this is what I define as an agent, being able to call tools, but do an unbounded set of actions until it naturally comes to a conclusion. And I would say probably that only became true in last year.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah. And
with the specific model, with like 4.0 or with
like Sonnet 3.5, I think was the first time you could see a glimpse of agentic behavior. Then they came out with the next version, which had computer use, and you can tell they're starting to optimize for long horizon reasoning. Yeah. And now 3.7 is very, very impressive, and I think other companies are following suit.
So if you had to guess, when will we solve coding with models? When do you think that'll be?
Like I said, I think for the tasks that people use Replit for, so like micro SaaS, like I'm an entrepreneur spinning up my startup. I'm building internal tools. I'm building microservices. I'm building AI agents. So not super large code bases, not like 10 gigabytes. I think this is like towards the end of the year, it'll feel perhaps like a mid-level engineer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll feel like you have a software engineer in your pocket. Mm-hmm. Like you'll open Replit on your phone and you'll be able to build an application. I mean, we already see this. I mean, it's kind of, I was in Qatar the other day. I was in a conference and I was walking around and someone stopped me and it was like, hey, I work at Qatar Airways and, I'm not from the region. I don't speak Arabic. So I was at a meeting where everyone's speaking Arabic. So what I did is I pulled out my phone and I asked it to make a translation app using OpenAI Whisper and whatever. Yeah. And before the end of the meeting, he had the app. He couldn't use it that exact meeting, but he was able to use it in subsequent meetings. And so the idea of on-demand software is already here. It's just going to get a lot more reliable towards the end of the year. Now, the question of when do we get to a point where you can wholesale automate sort of big aspects or large aspects of the software engineering team? I think probably product engineering, front engineering, some full stack engineering. Towards the end of this year as well, we're going to see significant impact on that, where teams can be a lot smaller, a lot leaner, where you have AI agents running continuously on your code base. And I think maybe by 2027, a single entrepreneur could be spending tens of thousands of dollars on virtual employees.
Yeah, very neat. I want to go back to something you said when you were talking about making some of your first, or making the Visual Basic apps and scripts and practicing what you did. Mm-hmm. How do you practice what you do now?
Ooh, that's a great question. By writing email.
I thought that's too.
At night, just on the keyboard.
Yeah. But how do you practice writing the important work emails even?
An interesting one is public speaking. Is what I'm doing here, right? Is being able to communicate sort of complex ideas And I think you can do that by progressively putting yourself in more and more difficult situations where you're having to improvise. For example, you can commit to a talk, but go there unprepared. Maybe that's the final boss, right? But like you can maybe do it with an interview, with a fireside chat or something like that first. I mean, we have a value at Replit. It's seek pain.
Such a founder's value.
Yeah. It scares a lot of people from joining the company, which I think is a good thing. And the idea behind it is like through pain and uncomfort, growth happens. So I think my version of practicing what I do is leaning into the hard and painful parts of it. If I feel like I'm flinching for something, try to override that and do it even harder and put myself in even more uncomfortable situations.
Yep. Has it changed, like what you find yourself flinching from or taking pain from? Has that changed over?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like making large changes to the company. I mean, obviously the most painful of them is a layoff.
Yep.
But also just reorgs, changing the priorities.
Right.
They're all painful, especially like you can tell people are disappointed, right? And I've gotten better and better at that. And it's not like I don't feel people's emotions. I feel them as strongly. Yeah. But I'm able to frame it in a way in my mind that like I'm doing the best for the company. Yeah. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm often right. And we'll end up net better, not just for me, for the employees, for the shareholders, and for everyone.
Yep. That kind of like scale in your mind of, like immediate pain over here or immediate discomfort or displeasure. And then like longer term, it will be, or medium term even, it'll be better. And the scale goes that way.
Exactly. I mean, it's, it's counterintuitive, but like seeking pain is actually net reducing pain, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't stay there.
Yeah. Well, delaying pain compounds it.
Yes.
Right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
So speaking of things that compound, we met a long time ago, and there were times when Replit has been around for how long? Or like Replit, the website, not necessarily the
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
And then there were times when maybe like more effort or less effort into it prior to forming a company, but it always kind of compounded. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Most people, when they put something on the internet and then don't pay attention to it, everyone else stops paying attention to it too. Mm. That's like not the Replit story.
I did quite a bit of work initially on SEO. Mm-hmm. And I did quite a bit of work on promoting it initially. And those things at least used to compound. I mean, right now, like the web is totally different. I bought this like SEO book, which wasn't that helpful. Like actually,
like an actual book.
Yeah. I was like really interested, and I was like, okay, I've been mostly programming and I haven't done any marketing. But I just like learned about like, getting backlinks from authoritative sites and doing all of that. So I started spamming the web. Yep. I got like Replit's link in Wikipedia somewhere.
That's probably a really good one, actually.
That's a really good
high domain authority.
Yeah. And then as it got started, basically just compounds and, people started using it, and like I'll post like the first few links on Stack Overflow, then people start using it there, and that also is
like here's your fix, but like go see this.
Yeah, I spent like 3 months like answering questions on Stack Overflow using Replit, and then people start doing it. I'm like, okay, that's done. Like let's go to the other one. So you want to bootstrap growth. And then, that's how exponentials happen, right? By like you bootstrap the thing and it grows slowly, and then more and more people do it. They tell their friends about it. The links, get better over time and so on.
How did you know that was something you should be doing? Somewhat, I mean, like Wikipedia specifically, but just like backlinks, SEO, like how did you know you should learn about all of that? I was just like attracted to the idea of like more people using my stuff. Mm-hmm. I was like, there are 2 reasons I like that. One is I actually just like the challenge, the infrastructure challenge of scaling things. Like I want more people to use my stuff because I wanted to break and I wanted to fix it. I want to like learn how to build distributed systems. And so there's like a
sort of a nerdy reason to grow. But I've always loved this feeling, like the first time we went viral, the first time we...
Well, tell me about that. You seem like you remember it.
Yeah. It's one of the best days in my life. 2008 all the way to 2011, I'm iterating on this idea. And finally it worked. Like we had a technical breakthrough and we were the first to run like Python in a browser.
And how did you do that?
I had the intuition that what I needed to do to run other programming languages is to compile them to JavaScript. And I was getting really good at JavaScript and getting really good at compilers. And initially I started kind of writing these languages, these interpreters myself. I'm like, I'm going to write Python and JavaScript. And that was a really bad idea. It would have taken me another 10 years to do it. But I found this project that was being incubated by Mozilla Research. And what they were trying to do is to take a sort of native program written in C, and then compile it using LLVM, is Apple's kind of compiler toolchain, to something called IR, intermediate representation. So not to machine code, so it's just this intermediate representation. And someone at Mozilla figured out that we can turn that intermediate representation into JavaScript fairly easily. That was the idea. By the way, that idea became WASM, and we have it all over the web. And that guy worked on WASM, and so I found it was very, very early, and it could barely run something like Python. And the main missing things were creating a virtualized environment on the client side. So this is where we contributed to the project. This is where we spent a lot of our time. So it's like, how do you make it so that JavaScript or the compiled program thinks there's a file system, thinks it's running on Unix. And so we started writing all these APIs. For example, like when it tries to reach for a file, we actually go to the server and then fetch that file and bring it all the way back. So instead of going to disk, it's going to the web, right? So we got to a point where we're running Python. That was like a magical thing. And
I think I remember that when that happened. Yeah.
And I tried, because you were trying to build on it, I think, on the open source project, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was this, it was a coffee pun, but it was JavaScript to Java.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I tried to launch a few times, actually. Although we had the technical breakthrough, it wasn't really picking up as much as I'd like. I was so surprised. I was like, we had this big thing and like almost no one seems to care. So I kept trying to launch. I kept doing it on Twitter, on IRC was still a thing, on Reddit, Hacker News multiple times. Finally, there was one that hit. And I remember the title. It was like, try Python, try Ruby, try Lua, all in the browser. And then that got upvoted. It was in Hacker News for 48 hours. And then it started getting picked up on Twitter. Google Plus was still a thing. I'm really dating myself here. And then, my friends and I, some of them worked with me on Replit. We were in the desert, actually, in Petra. We're we had been working on this thing for a long time, and we kind of wanted to go on a trip. And again, we're on these Nokia phones. I mean, none of us had iPhones. The Hacker News thread happened, and then, travel the next day or something like that. And I couldn't enjoy the trip because I kept going to this old Symbian, I don't know what the web used to be called, the web browser used to be called on this, and search Twitter for Replit and just see everyone tweeting about it. And my favorite one was Brendan Eich, the inventor of JavaScript, tweeting about Replit. And that was that was the highlight.
Peak moment.
Yes.
It was great.
Yes, yeah.
Well, also along that early Replit journey and maybe middle Replit journey, there were people there was also just a lot of skepticism. How did you think about that when you had, smart people being like, oh, you can't do this in a web browser, or if you do this, no one will want it, it'll always be slower. Never mind running it on a phone.
Yeah, I mean, they also had very reasonable arguments.
Right.
I remember some of my friends in Jordan and colleagues were like, no one's going to download 10 megabytes of JavaScript to run your thing, which literally it was 10 megabytes to download the Python interpreter. which was a lot at the time.
Yeah, right.
Especially on phones and what have you. I think I just like naturally either wired or through upbringing that it actually just like makes me want to prove them wrong if someone tries to kind of knock down an idea that I have. And that's often a good trait. Sometimes it's a bad trait because like sometimes they're really right and it's like there's like a freaking wall and I can't really get through it. Yep. So yeah, I think it just like comes naturally to me.
How can you tell, or how soon can you tell if you're, up against a, I don't know, wood wall versus a like cement wall?
Over time, this is a question of like, how do you know ground truth, right? And it's very hard with things like product market fit, like what is the market for this? Because there's all these ways in which you can sort of make assumptions about the market or calculate something or convince yourself of something that's wrong. And then I think it's sort of this buzzword like first principle thinking or a priori thinking. And the idea is like, what are the sort of basic assumptions about people and markets, whatever that would allow me to arrive at whether this is possible or not, or this is something people want or not. For Replit, the need was obvious, like it was solving a real use case, but the whether people would pay for it was really hard and painful for a long time. And I think I was sort of steadfast in my belief that I could find a business model or I could find a way for people to pay for it. And at some point, I think over the past couple of years, I just realized that, when you have alternatives that are free and easy, and when your thing has this mass appeal and it's not like made for a specific type of professional and it's replaceable, even if it's not easily replaceable, people will go through the pain. If you're going to charge them, they will go through the pain to replace it. Yeah. So most people in the world are time rich and sort of money poor, as it were. So they will always trade off. They will always like put in more time. And Replit was saving time. Yep. And I just realized that we needed to sort of go up market, go to a place where people actually were time poor, and saving them time is the thing that they would want to pay for. Yeah. And so Replit Agent is the ultimate expression of that, because it actually saves you like insane amount of time, like orders of magnitude, time, and it could be time that you're spending or time a developer that you outsource to is spending. Right. And that could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And we hear that from our customers all the time, like literally 2 or 3 orders of magnitude. And so now it's very easy to capture value. Like we 10x our growth over the past 6 months. Congrats. Thank you. I just try to be rigorous in how I sort of, even before looking at data or anything like that, just like try to be rigorous in my thinking.
Of like what you might want to see in the data, or what if it goes this way, you'll think this. And
And even I would like try to form an opinion, before I would actually go and try to research, and based again on sort of principal ideas or what I view, what I know about like human nature.
That's neat. You've also talked a lot about hiring high agency individuals. What does that mean?
I think in sort of in life, the way we're shaped is to continuously shed autonomy in a way, right? Like where, as a child, you're probably like the least controlled, Like you sort of, by nature, you're very, very open. You're learning things. You're playing, and you're breaking all the rules and all of that. But over time, you're like molded into something that is like more acceptable to society. You don't want to get in trouble. And then you have all this work in school, and all this work in university, and you're sort of molded in a way of working that is like, very, it's the same. Like everyone sort of works the same because school applies a certain pressure. I think the high agency people tend to be misfits, because otherwise you're gonna get this sort of like the usual corporate drone. The reason it's no fault of their own, but they're not actually. They come up in a system where it sort of punishes original thinking and it rewards conformity. The misfits are those who cannot conform, and they tend to be weird because of that, right? It's not that they don't want to conform. A lot of them experience a lot of pain in life for not, and I experienced that myself. Like I got expelled 20 times from my school, and there was like all these problems. Like I couldn't sit in class, and I kept failing because my grades were always great, but I kept failing because I just like simply couldn't sit in class, and like we had attendance, like you had to do the attendance. And so eventually I sort of hacked into the university to try to change my grades to
Did that work?
It worked until I got caught.
And but are we talking like an hour, or are we talking like a semester?
No, like a few months. I went and bought the gown and was like going into all these parties and like was just ready to graduate, and then I got caught. Nice. But I just felt like I felt like I was owed to that to graduate, because I always got A's, but I just didn't want to sit in class. I couldn't call it ADHD or whatever. I just like physically couldn't. And so I think a lot of people who tend to be high agency have something where it's harder for them to conform. It's not 100%, but I think that's for the most part. So one thing is you should be open to that. You should be open to people who are awkward. You should be open to people who are dropouts. Obviously, now Silicon Valley is actually prefers that dropout. Yes. But I think just the openness to being able to interview these people is a big step in that direction, and then having a culture that actually could bring in these people and have them be productive.
Yep. And so do you find, actually, the you of today, if you couldn't sit through school, can you sit through meetings?
If I'm like interested, and if I am running the meeting and I am like trying to get something out of it, I'll run it with intensity. But the moment it starts going in circles, whatever, I'll like immediately tune out. But I also think that that's bad, and like you should just leave, right? You should like end the meeting.
We'll regroup for when we figure out what we want to get out of this.
I'm increasingly doing that because I don't feel like these are productive. Like when I tune out, I think it's a signal that perhaps we shouldn't be in the meeting.
Something is off.
Yeah.
What is it about the high agency people, or like the misfitting? Maybe it makes it easy to identify these folks, but why are they effective later because of this?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is questioning conventions. And I think working at a startup, one, if you're trying to build something sort of new and bringing something new to the world that is actually different than what most people used to do. For example, like everyone codes on their desktop computer. No one wants to code on the cloud, or you want to change that. So if they're not wired differently in the first place, the conformist thing to do is actually not to join this company. But that also extends to their day-to-day work, where they're more inventive. Like I think that they're able to look at problems and able to solve it in a way that is novel, whereas maybe the regular engineer would take a lot more time or write a lot more code for it, and perhaps the person who's wired differently would actually be able to look at it at a different angle that is not obvious and invent something.
Yep.
And we have a culture of invention. We've been able to open source a lot of things that we've done, and we've been able to stay lean for a long time because, we have these high agency people.
So speaking of doing things new, a lot of things Replit has done over the years, whether it's technical innovations or UI patterns or business models, are new and so good they end up getting copied by giants. How do you feel about that?
Actually, I used to feel really bad. I think I take it for granted now that it'll happen. It's still annoying. It's especially annoying when people do not know that we sort of innovated that.
Yeah.
A lot of Microsoft products are designed by Replit.
Right. How do you feel being the chief designer of the Copilot suite?
I'm also chief marketer. We updated our mission at some point from making programming more accessible to try to make it more ambitious to creating the next billion developers. And GitHub is now saying that. So I'm both a chief marketer, chief designer at Microsoft. So
I'm sure they pay for those jobs. That's quite good.
I haven't gotten so maybe I should ask for that. But you sort of over time you kind of resign yourself to it. But I think it's good to really understand it because you start to know what is a moat and what is something that is easily copyable. Yeah. What is the lead time before people copy things? You sort of have naturally more urgency because you know that it's going to happen. If it's a good idea, people will copy it.
Yeah.
We were the first kind of at scale software agent back in September and quickly got copied multiple times.
Do you have a model now for what is less easy to copy or what lends itself to more of a durable moat?
UI innovations, you can think of them as public goods. They just
if they're good, they will go off and
immediately
into the universe.
Immediately, within a week. Yeah. We see competitors copying UI innovations that we do, which is sad because we have a really great design team and we kind of really spend a lot of time and energy, stressing every pixel, and then those get copied. Things that are trial through fire, or things that have a lot of pain associated with them, especially on the infrastructure side, those tend to be harder to copy. What I said earlier about I love reaching scale because I like designing robust systems. Yeah. And a lot of times that's what it takes, is that we build a system and we drive as much traffic and growth to it to see it break and fix it and become anti-fragile over time. And I think those tend to have maybe not a lasting advantage. Those tend to have a longer lead time before people catch up to you. It might be in the years. I think Replit infrastructure has many years of, because we've dealt with all the abuse, we've dealt with all the security, we've dealt with everything that has to do with running virtual machines in the cloud and giving it to users. It's a really tough problem, and anyone who wants to compete with us has to go through all of that. And then, lasting advantages are actually really hard. You know this. Anyone who's running a business and then starts to get all this competition, you start to think really, really hard about what lasting advantages are. Obviously, the buzzword in Silicon Valley is network effects. Everyone wants to build network effects. It's actually quite hard to find a way to build network effects, but I think over time, as you're running the company, you start finding opportunities to not only differentiate, but also differentiate in a lasting way. And there are not that many ways, and you can sort of study them. Yep. There's this book, 7 Powers, and it tells you, there's 7 ways to build moats. Yes. And I think it's very, very true.
Any advice for a founder starting out early on this topic? Because it sounds like you've gotten to a more zen than before state. But like for someone who's early on and is not yet at that pinnacle of enlightenment.
I mean, I sort of tend to be sort of a little fatalistic about how these things go. Like you can, like if I were to go and try to give myself advice when I was 20, my 20-year-old self would not listen, tell me to F off, or something like that. And so for me personally, I sort of, you and I have sort of an experience in that where I was like, okay, maybe I can fund Replit through the selling to educators.
Yes.
And you were like, it's not a good business. I'm like, I'm going to try it anyways. It's like,
but it seems like it should be. It seems like it should work.
Well, sometimes now it's starting to work with AI and a lot of that. I don't know if people know, but you're the first angel investor, definitely in Replit. So,
coffee shop down here in 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
16.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it's hard to learn from experience. However, I think you can teach sort of mental models, frameworks, things like that. It's just this simple thing of like what we talked about with seek pain. Yeah. I think it would help me a lot because there are many times, a lot of bad decisions that I've done with a company tend to be, I know that this is the path, but it's painful. It requires a pivot. It requires letting someone go. And I try to delay it or try to work around it. And almost always, I should have done it like a year or two ago. So if I were to give myself advice, is to kind of lean more into the difficult. And by the way, speaking of sort of moats, and I think if you continuously do the difficult thing, I think you're going to perhaps create something that's quite differentiated because it's the path less traveled.
I do believe that. And I don't know about you, but trying to shrink the time where I felt like I delayed making a bad decision. I wish I could tell you, it was like, oh, it's 24 hours all the time. Yeah. I've got a great SLA. Right. Not true. But at least, we talk about it in days or weeks and not months or years, right? And it's just that it goes down over time.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you all wrote an AI manifesto. Why'd you do that?
We wanted to sort of put a stake in the ground of what Replit's approach to AI. Because I think, we were trying to hire AI engineers and researchers. We have a great team right now. And it was like we have to compete with 5 to 10 times the salaries that we could pay. And so we wanted to just, tell the world and talk about it internally is that this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to be differentiated.
And where did that manifesto come from? You, I imagine, but...
Yeah, me and head of AI, now president, Michele Catasta. So we just spend a lot of time... Actually, so we did this big deal with Google that had an AI partnership and Google Cloud partnership. He was the counterpart, the AI researchers at Google. So we spent a lot of time talking about how AI changes programming over many dinners and many nights. And so when he joined Replit to run AI, we had already kind of explored what was possible together, and we were starting from the same starting points. So much so, we had this vision, and we wanted to put a stake in the ground. We're also not worried about sharing it. A lot of founders tend to be worried about sharing it.
This is not remote.
Yeah, exactly. I gave a TED Talk in October 23 about this is what software agents will look like, and this is how Replit will build them. I'm continuously surprised how much we got right. Even the UI back then, we're still kind of implementing. Even before test time compute or reasoning models came out, one detail from that talk, I was like, well, when you have a software agent and it's struggling, you can sort of pour more compute into it and it'll do a better job. And so there's all these predictions that turned out to be right. And I think it's what we talked about with my sort of prediction about where the web's going. It's actually doing the work. Not many people do the work of like sitting down and thinking about, okay, where is this headed?
And what is your take on where it's all headed?
In AI, there's the idea of the singularity, where it comes from physics, where the point for which you can't predict afterwards. We're not really at the singularity. I don't really believe that. However, I think AI agents are going to take off so much, and they're going to change the economy fundamentally. They're going to change how companies work. One prediction about how companies work is that I think the nature of the firm will change. Companies will be hiring generalists because anyone can be a software engineer. You have an AI agent that's quite competent.
You can vibe code your way to your translation app. Yeah.
Right. And you can actually vibe code your way into becoming like a good at finance.
Yep.
So you can think about it as, in video games, there's this character or hero that can adopt any other hero's superpower, right? And I think this is what companies will be made from, where like high agency generalist people that are augmented by AI agents that are able to do a lot and get a lot of work done in any given hour, day, or even minute. So I think we're at a point where it's really hard to predict what happens next. I can tell you like how the technology will progress, and I think that here's a few ideas in the near future. I think we're all going to get more and more comfortable with software being asynchronous.
What do you mean asynchronous?
So right now we sit in front of a computer, we're trying to get a task done, and we're like clicking and spending time there. We're going to be comfortable with modes like deep research, where you're sending off the computer, the AI, to do a lot of work and come back to you.
You go get a coffee by the time you're back and settled.
Or you work on something else. So I think like this multitasking sort of ADD way of working will be the way of working in the coming months. Replit right now, we're making that trade-off. We're like, well, we can work for 10, 15, 20 minutes. The AI can work for 20 minutes. It can produce 10x the results of working 2 minutes. Like there's almost like this linear relationship between how many minutes we're spending on reasoning tokens or whatever with the output, whether it's quality, UI, all of that. And we're still kind of validating that. We're finding that our customers are fine with that. So we will send them a notification. They'll like put in a prompt and we'll send them a notification when the AI is done working. And in my opinion, that's the main modality of working. Even like by Q3 to Q4, many of us will be kicking off these agent workloads and checking on all of them or getting coffee or whatever.
Okay, how is this different from like long build times though? Right? Because like engineers hate long build times. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, engineers have experienced this for a long time.
But like generally aren't positive on that experience. But like how is it different in an agentic world?
The compiler taking a minute or 10 minutes or an hour is not going to change the quality of my software. An agent taking a minute, 10 minutes will fundamentally change the quality of the output. So we're going to be constantly making time quality trade-offs. Whereas the compiler, you're just going to have to wait.
You're just waiting,
So in this case, we actually have a choice. And I think more and more people would prefer. I mean, there are always the iterative prototyping modality. But, for example, on Perplexity, I'm a big user of Perplexity. I almost have the pro mode always on, right? Yeah. And like I'll put in a query, I'll go to a different tab and come back to it in a second.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about this because Replit, one of the first things was like you get your response instantly. Like that is
it's
a
in the name.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a name, loop. Yeah. There's some looping, but you're not doing it. The machine is doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Literally, like all the stuff we built. We just switch out the user to an AI. So the AI is doing fast iteration, but you're not.
That's neat. Another way I think Replit's really different is your approach to marketing. And maybe I don't know if you're still, combing the web for backlinks these days, but you have a sort of, how do you think about it today? Like, especially like to prompt you a little bit, but like community, what marketing people call influencer marketing, like how do you think about all of that?
Yeah. So, I early on in running Replit, I found the power of social media. I was able to like bootstrap all these products and businesses and open source projects, like being part of React. Like, Bloomberg never wrote about React. Maybe they did recently, but React became the number one framework in the world. React Native became the number one cross-platform development in the world with very little. Even Facebook didn't market it all that much. Yeah. So you kind of came into this company realizing the power of what going direct.
Oh yeah, as the kids say today.
Yeah,
yes.
as a buzzword now. I was like, we used to call it tweeting.
Yes, exactly.
Now it's like going direct.
Proper media strategy.
Right, exactly. So, I that was already obvious to me. But also early on in the company, I hired a PR agency, which they have their uses still, but to write about like a fundraise or something like that, they took so much of my time and money, and it landed in some outlet that no one like maybe
for West Texas.
30 people read it, and I was like, I look at my Twitter and like I'm getting like hundreds of thousands of views. And then I literally said that on Twitter. That went viral. It was like, oh, I paid this much for this PR a PR agency to do this. I didn't get any readership, but on Twitter, and it was like meta thing about it is that tweet itself went viral. So that was another learning experience, and I think it's more fun that way. And I think just watching the experience of people like established founders like Zuck and others and I worked at Facebook where they built him up so much and then they turned him down.
Yep.
And I think that's the business model of media, of corporate journalism, is building you up. And then after they finish building you up, there's only
one way to go.
There's only one way to go to generate the same news headlines. And so if they're not building you up, I mean, I get very little sort of coverage in sort of mainstream media. It's a different relationship that you have. You also just have direct relationship with your users, your customers. I get a lot of feedback, especially on X, from customers. In terms of our approach to community.
Actually, before you do that, on X or Twitter, you're so much better on that platform than most people, very much me included. But like, how do you think about it? What are your tips?
The first thing I would say is it's about distilling ideas. So right now you can write arbitrary number of characters. I almost never go above the limit because I think it's a feature, not a bug, to be able to distill ideas. So I might spend, on a tweet that matters, I might spend 30 minutes trying to distill the idea, and it might sometimes be a background task in my head, like as I go through my day.
Yeah, your agent is doing other things.
Yeah. I'm trying to distill like a idea to like its most potent potential expression. And the other thing, it's about understanding the mode of the platform. So X is one where you're like scrolling really fast. Maybe LinkedIn is you're not as fast, you're willing to read. And so with X, you're really having to grab attention in the first few words. There's also a thing about X that drama is something that is very interesting. So fights are very interesting to people. You don't want to be cheesy and like unoriginal about it or like overly combative or whatever, but like there are a sense in which, the beefs like work. There's a sense in which sort of also sometimes being a little vague is works because people will like interpret it in different ways. And then there's like a viral effect to that because they will apply their own opinion. Like they'll quote tweet it with their own opinion or their own view of what you said. Also, saying things with confidence. Although that might not be how you speak in day to day. Like I think it's a good strategy for Twitter because that generates strong disagreements and strong agreements.
Yep.
And that actually fuels a virality as well.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for those tips. What about community?
Yeah. I would credit a lot of that to Haya, my co-founder. Early on, she really cared about the people, cared about the machines more. And so I remember even when she started working on it with me, she was like, well, I want to run a survey to learn this thing or that. I was like, why? Like, I can tell you what it is. Like, I built this thing. And she would find out things that I wouldn't have imagined about how people use the product and things like that. And since then, we've just had this approach to our community with this empathy and understanding how people use the product. I'm only one person tweeting, although I have a large audience. But if you want a lot more people kind of carrying the message of Replit, carrying the culture and vision of Replit, you want to create this core group of users that really care about that. Yeah. And you want to sort of invest in them, and you want to create reasons for them to stay with you, create connections so that people feel like they're friends in the community as well. That is somewhat of a moat, right? That is somewhat of a network effect. And you need to keep sort of watering the plants. And it's like a constant investment to make, which is hard. And it's also hard to find really great community managers. And the founders need to do that a lot of the time.
Yeah. You're a power lifter, yeah?
I used to be more so. I've lost a lot of weight, but yes.
How is it similar to running a company?
Well, I think progressive overload is very true.
Characteristic of both.
Yes. The idea behind powerlifting is you increase the weights progressively, and you get stronger, and your perceived exertion might stay the same, but you're able to lift more weights. And I think that is very much true. I mean, the amount of workload, pain
you can endure, what causes you pain,
stress you can endure over time, all those things are progressive.
Yes. Well, you've also read more widely on philosophy than your average founder. Does that influence how you think about AI?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time reading about just the nature of consciousness and actually trying to actually struggle with that question, where I think a lot of people, AI researchers, people in the AI space, just take it for granted that consciousness is an emergent phenomena, where we live in this physicalist reality. There's only the physical, and so there's nothing to explain about consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. It's merely emergent, and I don't really believe that. And I think once you sort of dig into the literature and see how far people have, philosophers have explored, they don't have answers. That's the problem. So it's like a slog, and then eventually, you're just still remain with the questions, but at least you've asked the question deeply, and it is a very important question now that we're headed into this world where we're going to have AI-based employees and so on. Are they actually conscious? Yeah. If we're going to get to AGI, does that thing need to have rights? Right? If it is conscious, if we believe that consciousness is emergent, then what makes us so sure that it doesn't have consciousness?
Right.
Well, I actually think that my view is it's probably not, fully emergent. There's probably something special about humans. And I think it's probably a view shared mostly with religious people, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. I can sort of speculate as to, what is the sort of nature of consciousness or what have you. But I would say it's more likely than not that consciousness is not this purely physical emergent phenomena.
If folks are curious to explore some of the ideas behind that themselves, what should they go?
Actually, I said all of that, and I'm going to suggest a book that actually makes the argument that it is emergent, which is Douglas Hofstadter, I Am Strange Loop.
Yep.
But the reason it's good is like it makes the best argument possible for emergence, and it's very digestible. And at the end, I felt like I wasn't convinced.
That's good. Neat. We've talked about how your dad encouraged some of your early interest in computers. Alternate universe, none of that happened. I don't know, you never found a computer.
Yeah.
What would you be doing?
I was interested in poetry and sort of language, literature. So my mom is sort of the opposite of my dad. My dad is your engineer's engineer, and my mom couldn't be further from that. She is like very spiritual. She reads literature and poetry and all of that. She introduced me to a lot of that early on, especially Palestinian literature and poetry, which comes from the sort of struggle, and it's very, very potent because it's shaped by that. I don't know if I'll be a poet per se, but I think it's plausible that I would be interested in, instead of the crafting of code, the crafting of language.
Does some of the Palestinian poetry stand up in English? Like, is there anything folks should check out?
I say Mahmoud Darwish is the one that's like most translatable to English.
Yeah.
He might have even written his own English. So I recommend that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking here at your office in Foster City, which is not San Francisco. It's Foster City. How's Foster City treating you?
Good. I mean, look at the view outside.
At least 30 degrees warmer.
Right. It's warm. We have this lagoon. We do one-on-ones, walk on the lagoon. I really like it. The sort of big caveat is there's nothing out there.
Is that a feature or a bug, though?
It's a feature, in my opinion. Yeah. So there's a Costco. People can go, $1.50 hot dog there. But we try to have everything here.
Yeah.
So like, in the morning we have someone, like a barista making coffee. We have lunch and dinner on some select days cooked by a chef. And as you know, Hai and I really care about what we eat, care about our health and our employees' health, even sometimes when they don't like it or don't know that we, only carry good, healthy snacks and everything. People come up to us. I was like, I feel like a lot healthier after I joined Replit. It is certainly a feature that it is a little boring here. And I think the other thing is we're able to think, I feel like there's just the space allows you to think a little bigger.
Yep.
Because I feel like in San Francisco, you're just cramped. And then the other thing is like in San Francisco, everyone is, there's such a tight feedback loop between everyone and everything that people say it's like a bubble, that kind of removing ourselves from that has actually netted out with more original ideas, I would say.
If a founder came and spent a day with you in Foster City, maybe here, maybe out, but like, what would you do for a day?
I would do Q&A with the team. So I would, I'm always like trying to bring different perspectives, even if something that is someone who runs the company totally differently. I am.
They just avoid pain constantly.
I would like to meet.
I don't think the pain would.
Yeah. It's like company died.
Yeah, exactly.
We had like Mike Noop the other day from Zapier, and they're like fully remote company, and they do different things quite differently, and it's like to hear different perspectives. So introduce them to the team, have that sort of discussion, maybe go for a walk, maybe sort of show them some of those very intense meetings we have, show them a few demos that we're working on. I remember one of my favorite visits like that was Jack Dorsey visiting Replit in the SF office.
I remember hearing about this from you.
Yeah, we spent four or 5 hours together, and it was basically all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Any advice for early stage founders that is like truly unconventional?
There are a lot of rules in Silicon Valley that you can just throw away. When a VC tells you that this is our process, we write checks only this size, we have to take this percentage of the company, none of this is true. They always break their own rules, right? So that's one. Two, a lot of what people tell you you're supposed to do, a lot of it is actually not good advice. I mean, now it's becoming mainstream, but I stopped doing one-on-ones, for example, 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. So way before it was cool.
Yeah, way before it was cool. What I found is one-on-ones tend to be sort of a therapy session. And I found that while, people need to be able to talk to someone, I just found it to be draining from my energy because people have a lot of anxieties and things like that. And, I try to talk about them in a group setting, but we also have a coach. So I just send people to a coach too.
That's great. Yeah.
So, I want to talk about work. I want to understand their worries about work, whatever. But I'm not a therapist, and it actually takes away from my time and energy, whatever.
Yeah.
So a lot of early stage founders, they find themselves constantly doing therapy, and I don't think that's a good use of their time.
Right. Or for those that really enjoy it, excellent. Right. But for those that don't,
yes. There's all these ideas around sort of who you hire, fundraising. You have to hire an executive team now. Again, you can run companies in so many different ways. I visited XAI, I think a year ago when there were 70 people. Oh, wow. And they told me they had no managers. Everyone reported to Elon, and everyone would send Elon a weekly status updates.
They probably didn't have one-on-ones.
They didn't have one-on-ones. He would come once a week or once however long, and he would sit, and sometimes he would do a marathon where he'd do one-on-ones with everyone. Oh, wow. Or do one to a few people per team. And the cool thing about it is I know one of the early engineers there who's leading go-to-market now. So they have purely engineering teams. They don't have non-engineers, and the engineers are doing the sales and marketing as well. And so that's a fundamentally different way of running a company. And that's one of the most successful founders of our generation, if not the most successful. So I will say every rule can be broken, but try to think through things. It's obviously just following every advice is bad. Just breaking everything for no reason is bad. Right. But try to think through things, continue to tinker, continue to change things, and that's how you learn.
Tinkering in the system is a neat analogy.
Yeah, and it's hard because people don't like change. Yeah. But they'll deal with it. It's fine.
Okay, rapid fire round for you. What are you reading right now?
Man, I haven't really read all that much recently.
Any good children's books?
That's exactly what I've been reading. Just a very light read. I read Genius Makers about the history, the recent history of deep learning.
Oh, right. Okay.
I read quite a bit of papers and Hacker News and blogs and internal documents, but I haven't. Erewhon, do you know that one?
No, I don't. I think I've heard of it, but I've not read this.
It's by Samuel Butler from the 1800s.
Okay.
And it's very interesting because, are you familiar with Butlerian jihad?
No.
It's from Dune, the movie. There are a group of people that don't like machines or against AI, and they do this thing called Butlerian jihad, and it comes from this book. Okay. And in this book, there is a tribe or a group of people that find that machines are sort of dysgenic, are making, it's it was the rise of Darwin, so it's a very Darwinian book. The machines make them worse as humans or less fit, and so therefore they're against any machine. And so it's very interesting for our age as we increasingly replace aspects of ourselves with computing and AI.
Yep. This is great. I'll check it out. Do you remember the first program you ever wrote?
It must have been Logo, a Logo program. Logo is this turtle you can program. Must have been like six years old or something like that. And must be something like move left, move right, and go down. Yeah.
What about something where at the time it seemed like a really big deal? And in retrospect, it was fine.
After we did the layoff last year, I felt like I couldn't bring back the culture of the company because I don't know if you know this, but there's something about a layoff that kind of breaks the sort of the bubble or like the dream, right? It was like, oh, we're not
a family. That's all
we're not a family. We're not always up and to the right. That it's going to be a tough decision. My relationship with the company is not unconditional. Yeah. I felt like, oh, it's going to be this like monumental task to try to bring the culture back. And, so start doing things that I don't think like I've ever done, which is like try to do events and things like that. Yeah. And like, we do some of those, but the way we built the culture wasn't that. So I was doing the wrong things. Yeah. And the way to bring the culture is to like win. is to work hard, motivate everyone and crush it. And that's what we did. And the culture is like stronger than ever. It's actually more fun and more exciting than ever. We ended up doing the right thing, but like the hopelessness that I felt was like nothing I felt during the company, because I cherished our culture so much and I felt like I made a lasting damage to it, which turned out not to be the case.
Yeah. And you didn't need to like cosplay something you weren't to get it back.
That's right.
Yeah. What about the flip side of that? What was something that kind of didn't seem like a very big deal at the time, but in retrospect ended up being quite important?
Early on, we were building the Replit platform. We sort of had a choice between like making Replit like more bespoke, where it was supporting like maybe one language or one way of building things, versus making it a general platform that can run any language or any package and all of that. And we went with the latter. Perhaps it was more like an aesthetic decision, but fast forward and LLMs are on the scene today. And so what are LLMs trained on? They're trained on sort of standards. They're trained on open source. They're trained on, they know how to use like a virtual machine and all of that. And so the fact that we went with a general, more standard platform way of doing things made it so that you can drop an LLM into Replit, it'll just work. Whereas if you look at some of maybe let's look at the low-code, no-code platforms, they're all bespoke. And so, LLMs haven't really had a big impact on those businesses as much as it had on ours.
Yeah, that's very neat. Well, thank you so much for the time for the conversation this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you found this conversation as enlightening and fun as we did. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested for more with Frameworks for Growth, you can find us across the internet as Vanta and at vanta.com. Thanks so much.